there, Ramblers, and welcome back to another instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming and technology. Hope you're all doing well out there. It is very wet here in the UK this week. I will say I have just taken a walk into town, into the centre of Leamington, about a mile and a half each way, and it rained the entire time. But I did have the incredible foresight to wear my waterproof walking trousers and also my new waterproof walking jacket as well, and largely managed to stay dry. Didn't even mess up my hair too much, although to be fair I don't really have much left nowadays. But that is that. Of course, you're not here for the weather forecast. You are here for the latest vintage and retro computing gaming news. One more thing, actually, I will just say, just before we do go into this week's Ramble, of course, I wasn't around last week. I didn't release a Ramble. It was completely unplanned. I actually made it here to the studio with good intentions. I sat down here, I got the microphone, the camera, the lighting, everything set up, and then there was something I had to go off and deal with, which ended up taking a hell of a lot longer than I expected. And by the time I was done, it was evening, and I just didn't have time to get anything recorded and out there. So apologies for that, and apologies for the lack of communication on that, but it was all very last minute. But anyway, I hope you didn't miss me too much. And of course, I am back this week. Also, the Ramble before that, I mentioned that I've made some changes to my audio workflow and stuff, and it turned out that I had to do a load of repair stuff on the audio as well before I could put that one out. So it's not been a very lucky couple of weeks for Reese Rambles. But anyway, I suppose we should get into the news. And speaking of not a lucky couple of weeks, I wanted to talk a bit last week about Bazzite. That was kind of going to be my lead story, because Bazzite is something that I've promoted quite a lot, both here on Reese Rambles and also on my main channel as well. Of course, it's that Linux-based gaming operating system. You've got Fedora Linux underneath, and basically the team behind it have taken on board a load of the work that Valve have done with the Steam Deck. Of course, their Linux gaming handheld, and Proton, their compatibility layer, so you can play all your Windows games on there. And what they've done is they've packaged it all up nicely and released it as something that you can run on a much wider range of hardware. And I've been a huge fan of Bazzite for a long time now. I've really been pushing it on both of my channels. And there has been some drama in that community, which I wanted to just talk about and give some of my thoughts on, as someone who's obviously, someone who has a bit of a vested interest in this, I think it's fair to say. At least as a user, anyway. I'm not close to the development side of it. But it all started with this blog post, which I did sit and read in great detail, from Antheus, who is one of the developers, one of the core team on the Bazzite project. Now, he has been kicked from the team due to personal differences, particularly with Kyle, who was the founder of Bazzite Linux. Now, there are a few things going on here, and particularly one thing that Antheus does draw attention to, and something that's also been discussed a little bit over on the Bazzite community as well by Kyle, is a partnership with a company called GPD. Now, GPD make gaming handhelds. I wasn't familiar with this at all, but they wanted to basically kind of co-brand this GPD Win 5, a handheld gaming PC, as an official Bazzite thing. So they were going to use all the Bazzite branding and stuff. And Antheus was actually dealing with GPD on this. And basically Kyle put out something that was quite not overly positive about GPD, and basically accusing them of some stuff and trying to ride their coattails and piggyback off their branding and stuff. Perhaps not aware of some of the discussion that was going on in the background with Antheus. But there is a wider picture here as well about wanting to, the typical open source stuff of the community, or at least the founders of the community, trying to pull things in slightly different directions. Of course, some people have this vision of Linux being kind of bang up to date, bleeding edge, all the latest technology. Some people like the stability and the security of it, and kind of being a bit more conservative with changes and things. And it seems that was also quite a big aspect of this big breakup as well. With some people wanting to go in one direction and some people wanting to go in another. Now, Antheus was taken on board the project because he had his own project, which was called Handheld Demon, which was basically a platform that's kind of improved compatibility of Linux with gaming handhelds specifically, which of course was of great interest to the Bazzite team, and that's why he got involved with Bazzite. He is going to continue that project. I'm not quite sure what form that's going to take and whether that's going to branch off into its own separate distribution, its own Bazzite fork or what. I think it's too early to say. And of course, I think Kyle and the other people involved are going to continue with Bazzite as is. Although Antheus does give a bit of a warning here in this blog post, where he says that they are kind of more pulling in the direction of keeping everything bang up to date and moving away from kind of the stability and the kind of more conservative package management decisions that Bazzite has been known for, and basically warning users and saying that that could lead to some issues in future. So what is my take on all this? Well, it doesn't bother me at all, to be honest. I mean, I've been using Linux for 25 plus years in various forms. I've been a big supporter of Bazzite because, of course, Windows does have the monopoly on PC gaming and has for a very long time. And I was a big believer in the way that it was packaged. I certainly still am. And I think the proof is in the pudding. You can install it, you can fire up Steam, you can play all of your Windows games on there with pretty much no fuss at all, including a lot of the older stuff that doesn't really work as well on modern Windows. And I think that pretty much speaks for itself. So that's why I've been pushing it. That's why I'm going to continue to push it. Do I think this is going to cause any longer-term issues for users? I don't think so. I'm not close to the development team, so I don't really know how much Antheus was keeping everything together. But it certainly seems like it's going to continue, and it certainly just seems a little bit like the typical open source community drama that unfortunately does always tend to be the case with these projects, and pretty much any project where you get humans working together who all have their own goals and their own desires in life. So that is that. If you are a Bazzite user and you have started using it on my recommendation, don't panic. Continue to use it. I certainly will. And if there are any big developments or any serious issues, I will try to stay on top of that and keep you up to date. But perhaps a good opportunity for me to go out and check out some of the competition. I'm certainly not married to Bazzite. It's just the first one that came along that ticked all the boxes for me. I think CashieOS, there's another one which is kind of a big competitor that's along similar lines. Might try to have a look at that at some point. Might be a good opportunity for that. But anyway, do form your own opinions. I will link to my sources down below. There is, of course, this Bazzite post-mortem from Antheus, which does go into quite a lot of detail. There's also a post from Kyle as well, who was the founder of the project, as mentioned, who was also working very closely with Antheus and has posted a bit of a correction. And there's some discussion underneath that. To be honest, if you have better things to do with your life, I certainly don't blame you, and I would just continue to enjoy gaming on your Bazzite-based device and not try to overthink it. That's my advice from someone who has been around the block a bit when it comes to these open source and Linux-based projects. And speaking of projects, let's just take a very quick moment indeed to talk about our sponsor, PCBWay.com. Now, of course, you may already be familiar with PCBWay thanks to their 11 years of experience in the PCB fabrication business, in which time they have built up quite the reputation for very fast turnaround, excellent customer service, and great quality control. But did you know, and I'm sure you probably do because I like to mention it most weeks, that they also offer some additional services. Services which are, of course, of interest to those of us in the maker community. Things like 3D printing, CNC machining, injection molding, and sheet metal fabrication. Well, if any of those are of interest to you for your next project, please do check out the link to PCBWay down in the description. And a big thank you once more to PCBWay for all of your support for Reese Rambles, for Control.Reese, and of course the wider community. So I started this week's Ramble talking about gaming on Linux, and specifically Windows gaming on Linux, thanks to the likes of Bazzite and SteamOS, and compatibility layers like Valve's Proton and stuff like DXVK, which we're going to talk about now. So just as a bit of a refresher, because this is something I talked about a few weeks back, DXVK is a Vulkan-based translation layer for Direct3D 8, 9, 10, and 11, which allows running 3D applications on Linux using Wine. Of course, 3D applications, I guess, predominantly meaning games for most of us, but certainly not limited to games. And you'll notice that starts at version 8 upwards. Obviously, Direct3D is Microsoft's own proprietary 3D rendering technology, part of DirectX and all of that. And Vulkan is kind of the latest and greatest low-level 3D rendering that is cross-platform. And indeed, a very useful thing for game developers to support, but certainly not something that is supported by every single game ever made, even though it has actually been around for a surprisingly long time. And for those games that only support Direct3D, of course, it had to be version 8 and upwards if you wanted to use DXVK to play those Windows games on Linux. But quite recently, there was a fork which supported older versions, and that's what I was talking about a few weeks ago. So this was D7VK. And there has been a very interesting update to this indeed, which widens the net for these retro games and I think makes life even easier for those of us who are looking to check them out again on our modern systems. So, the story here on gamingonlinux.com by Liam Dorr. The headline here is Vulkan-based translation layer D7VK officially expands to include Direct3D 5 support. So we're going back in time, back pretty much almost to, certainly the Windows 98 days. Was Direct3D 5 on Windows 95? I think 3 was kind of the earliest version I remember playing with on Windows 95. But anyway, there are some more details here on the story. So the Vulkan-based translation layer, D7VK, has version 1.3 out now, which officially expands it to also cover Direct3D 5 support for running more games on Linux. It now supports Direct3D 5, 6 and 7. Impressive work for the DXVK fork focusing on older versions of Direct3D. You could pair this up with Wine and Proton to hopefully give improved accuracy and performance in certain older games compared to plain Wine. Of course, these older versions of Direct3D have had support in the past through Wine under Linux. I certainly don't want to kind of overshadow those achievements. But this of course DXVK is a fantastic project and D7VK is a fantastic fork of it and certainly something to be celebrated. So the announcement from the developer reads, I'm afraid we've run out of 3D Mark versions at this point and the final reality benchmark isn't yet workable. However, this release officially introduces support for Direct3D 5. Don't worry, you won't run into any GPU-related performance limitations in this cursed land of our 3D forefathers, no matter what you use for translation for more modern APIs. Mind you, in the vast majority of cases, you're better off using the glide renderers that nearly all such late last century games offer as an alternative. Nice to see the developers being transparent about that. In addition to that, the Direct3D 7 and 6 sides have also seen a fair share of fixes and improvements. So we are opting into FSAA emulation. So, of course, that's anti-aliasing. Rather than enabling it globally by default and keeping it disabled until the game decides to use it or not, which saves a lot of memory bandwidth, apparently, does away with multi-sampled surface use unless a game is known to offer support for FSAA. You can still force enable it, of course, and there is a note here that AMD users may run into issues with some cases due to a known driver limitation around 16-bit texel buffers. And if you understand what that means, you're a smarter man than me. Anyway, starting with 1.3, they've made some changes to logging, which isn't very interesting at all. Unless you're a developer, of course, and you need access to that information. And they have fixed some bugs in Direct3D 6 and 5 titles. A developer called CK Nosferatu, an obscure FPU mode setup bug. And that looks like that part has been rewritten. So there are some rendering issues in Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Fantastic game, that. They have fixed the rendering issues in that, and that game is now fully playable, which I think is big news in and of itself. Also, Homeworld Emergence, and also known as Cataclysm in some parts of the world, and some precision-based rendering issues in some other games as well. There's a texture loading issue in Direct3D 6 and 5, which has been fixed. Drakan, Order of the Flame. I know, is it Phil's Computer Lab uses that to demo quite a lot of hardware on his channel. Not a game I've personally checked out. I do have a friend, actually, who's a massive fan of that game, which is something I really need to look into. But yeah, Free Space 2, Arabian Nights, and has also fixed some issues with texture corruption. There's also, they had a workaround, a proxy interface, which technically enabled some games to run under Windows using this compatibility layer, which did include No One Lives Forever, which is a game that is quite difficult to get working on modern systems and a bit of a classic, a bit of a cult classic. and fixes some issues with intro videos and back buffer service surfaces and stuff like that. And also finalised an assortment of Direct3D legacy surface groundwork, which was needed to properly support various Direct3D 5 games. So those are running a lot more stably and consistently and reliably under this new 1.3 release of D7VK. So the developers have been very busy indeed. And they have some titles here, some really big names here, actually, that's noted to work well with this latest release of Direct7VK. And it's nice to see that that includes Carmageddon 2, Carpocalypse Now, of course, a bit of a stone-cold classic in its own right. We've got Tomb Raider 2, we've got Mortal Kombat 4, we've got Nightmare Creatures, Nice 2, Mobile 1 Rally Championship, Death Trap Dungeon, and Lands of Lore 3. Now, these are just the kind of noteworthy releases, which are particularly well supported and do have the developer's own personal endorsement, but it's certainly not limited to that list of games. You can throw it at any of your Direct3D 5, 6 and 7 games and it should work reliably and with at least some degree of compatibility under your modern Linux operating system. So that is very cool news indeed. A really great project here from the community. And hopefully, I haven't actually checked. I don't know if this is shipping by default in stuff like Bazzite nowadays, but it certainly should be. I'm guessing some of those third-party game installers, stuff like Heroic Launcher and stuff, will be picking it up if they haven't already. So that's that. D7VK, the Direct3D 7 and now 5 and 6 compatibility layer, enabling support for some of those old Windows 98 and earlier era games under modern operating systems. Very, very good news indeed. Some rather sad news in the past couple of weeks regarding the state of the UK's gaming high street retail business, and a big name that I'm sure a lot of us here in the UK will be intimately familiar with. They were once a common sight on every single high street here in the UK, and certainly one that I have been known to visit and certainly purchase from a fair few times, although probably 10 plus years ago, the last time I set foot in one. They have been on the decline for quite a long time now and have become known in recent years as a bit of a Funko Pop merchant and perhaps not much else. I'm, of course, talking about Game. And I'm sure this logo will be instantly recognisable to any of us who have ever set foot in a British high street. So here's a story on gamesindustry.biz. UK retailer Game shutters last remaining standalone stores as it enters administration. Its 200 plus concessions and website will continue to trade as usual. So the concessions, as in their stores within other stores, will continue to trade. But apparently they had 3 kind of flagship high street stores left that were clinging on for dear life under the stewardship of their previous CEO, who has stepped down, or managing director, I should say. And the decision has now been taken from higher up in the group that those stores are now no longer required, which is a real shame and feels like a bit of an end of an era, although it's an end that has been a very long time coming, I think. So, a story here by Vicky Blake on gamesindustry.biz. UK high street retailer Game is closing its 3 remaining standalone stores as managing director Nick Aaron exits the company after 9 years. As reported by the Game Business via VGC, the Frasers Group-owned business will continue to operate its 200-plus concession sites across Sports Direct and House of Fraser stores, as well as its retail website. Now, I will say, of course, Frasers Group is Mike Ashley's business. You might know him from Sports Direct. And if you're not familiar with the state of the UK high street retail or indeed business in the UK, Mike Ashley is a bit of a household name, and he's a bit of a character as well. He has a reputation for going around buying up these failing retail businesses and I was going to say turning them around, but perhaps puppeting their zombified corpses and their once much-loved brands and milking them for every last penny that they're worth. Not sure if that was the situation with Game, but it certainly falls under his remit, certainly part of his group. So there you go. Perhaps that explains the Funko Pops. Anyway, we shall continue reading the story. Game filed a notice of its intention to bring in insolvency administrators last week, following weak sales over the Christmas period last year. Game was acquired in 2019 by Mike Ashley's Fraser Group, then Sport Direct, for £51.9 million. And that followed the retail billionaire snapping up a 25.75% stake in the chain 2 years prior, then slowly increasing his ownership of the company over time. At the start of 2024, the company decided to exit the pre-owned business. I remember reporting on that at the time, actually. Well, later that year, the retailer dropped its Xbox All Access and Reward scheme. I reported on that as well, actually, come to think of it. July 24, they stopped offering in-store pre-orders. And in April, the company made redundancies as the majority of workers were moved to zero-hour contracts. And in August, the majority of staff at Games head office were let go. So indeed, a bit of a long and drawn-out decline. 2025, they said that they've been forced to cancel some pre-orders for the Switch 2. And speaking with games industry in 2023, the then MD Aaron denied claims the chain was turning its back on its games business to focus on other items such as toys, insisting gaming is our core business and we will be the last man standing selling physical video games. I guess that prophecy did not come true. We see our place in the market as proving there is a place for physical, whether that be the collector's editions, which we see as the vinyl of video games, or the gifter who doesn't want to wrap up a download code for Christmas. But we need to be realistic. We have a business to run, and the expectation is this will decline. So we need to fill that gap. There you go. And then there's a story about Ubisoft in that confusing, endless scrolling way that these websites tend to do nowadays. So, yeah, very sad to see. It seems it's a bit confusing, isn't it? Because Game has entered administration and they've brought in insolvency administrators, but the brand will continue to trade via Game-branded concession stands in other Frasers Group stores, stuff like Sports Direct and House of Fraser. That's Mike Ashley for you, of course, trying to escape from any and all of the company's debts and things and, still continue to milk the brand for all that it's worth. If I'm sounding a bit cynical about all of this, it's because I am. But then, if his group hadn't acquired the company all of those years ago, it probably would have just vanished off the face of the earth instantly and everyone would have lost their job. So I guess that's kind of a positive spin that we can put on it. Of course, also recently acquired eBuyer, I believe. I did report on that at the time as well. So there you go. Did that prove to be £51.9 million well spent? I guess we'll never know. But sad to see those last three stores finally shutting up shop. And if you want to go and relive your nostalgia for the Game brand, you can pop into your local Sports Direct, pick up one of those giant mugs maybe while you're in there, or House of Fraser. A very important update on Notepad++ next, which of course is that souped up Notepad replacement for Windows. I know that I've installed it on pretty much every single Windows-based machine that I have for many, many years now, just as kind of an automatic thing as part of the whole initial setup process of those machines. And it has proven to be very useful indeed over the years with all sorts of interesting kind of development-focused functionality and the like. However, there has been some rather shocking news in Notepad++ land, and you're going to want to pay attention if you have this installed on your machine. So this is a story by Ars Technica, and it has been compromised. It's been compromised for a very long time, and it's the update mechanism for Notepad++ itself that has been compromised. So if you have auto updates enabled and installed and you've ever downloaded an update for it, or you have it quietly updating in the background, you're going to want to have a look at this. So the headline here, Notepad++ users take note. It's time to check if you're hacked. Suspected China state hackers used update infrastructure to deliver a backdoored version. A story here by Dan Goodin on arstechnica.com. Infrastructure delivering updates for Notepad++, a widely used text editor for Windows, was compromised for 6 months by suspected China state hackers who used their control to deliver backdoored versions of the app to select targets. Developers said Monday. I deeply apologise to all users affected by this hijacking, the author of a post published to the official notepad++.org site wrote on Monday. The post said the attack began last June with an infrastructure-level compromise that allowed malicious actors to intercept and redirect update traffic destined for notepad++.org. The attackers, whom multiple investigators tied to the Chinese government, then selectively redirected certain targeted users to malicious update servers, where they received backdoored updates. Notepad++ didn't regain control of its infrastructure until December. and they're only just telling us now. The attackers used their access to install a never-before-seen payload that has been dubbed Chrysalis. Security firm Rapid7 described it as a custom, feature-rich backdoor. Its wide array of capabilities indicates it is a sophisticated and permanent tool, not a simple throwaway utility. Notepad++ said that officials with the unnamed provider hosting the update infrastructure consulted with incident responders and found that it remained compromised until September the 2nd. Even then, the attackers maintained credentials to the internal services until December the 2nd, a capability that allowed them to continue redirecting selected update traffic to malicious servers. The threat actor specifically targeted Notepad++ domain with the goal of exploiting insufficient update verification controls that existed in older versions of Notepad++. Event logs indicate that the hackers tried to re-exploit one of the weaknesses after it was fixed, but that the attempt failed. Yeah, there we go. I'm not going to read the rest of the story to you because you've got, obviously, you've got the gist of it now. And this has since been fixed, but of course, worth, I guess, going to Notepad++ and checking out the official guidance on this. You want to remove all trace of Notepad++, do a clean install, do a virus scan, all that usual stuff. There is some guidance out here, which of course I will link to if that is of interest to you. And of course, this does affect older versions as well, but this was an ongoing thing for a very long time. So yeah, as someone who uses this myself and has it installed on some of my Windows machines, I'm certainly going to have to go through and cleanse all of those now. And just rather unfortunate all around. Of course, a very sophisticated state-level attack by the looks of things. So unfortunately, I think one of the kind of occupational hazards of this permanently online and updated software nowadays, and something that we do keep coming back to, but very important to be aware of. Has it knocked my love for Notepad++, something that I install but very, very rarely use? I don't know. I think I'm probably going to carry on installing it and using it. At least they found this and they've been open about it and they have fixed it. So I guess that's some good news. I think it must be about time for our weekly update, all about our favourite game, don't you? I'm, of course, talking about Doom. Shout out to the Doom Shrine behind me, my collection of Doom-related releases and paraphernalia, spanning all the way from the original shareware release that I had as a kid, all the way to, I think I've got some Doom Eternal stuff here somewhere. I've certainly got some Doom 2016 stuff. The less said about the new one, the better. I still haven't played it. I've not heard great things about it. Anyway, that's Doom. And of course, it's a game that has a proud history of being ported to many interesting devices over the years. I'm sure it needs no introduction. It's something that I give an update on pretty much every single week here on Reese Rambles. And I also threw my own hat into the ring a couple of weeks ago. Not the first time. I did do Doom on a desk a while back, and I have run it on some interesting stuff. Although I'm a bit of a cheat, I must say, when it comes to Doom, because it's basically just PC. It's just PCs in interesting enclosures, you know? And you're not a genius for pointing that out, as some people did in the comments. Mean people. Don't be mean to me on the internet. That's not very nice. Anyway, if you wanted an update on this, by the way, I thought I'd just show you my analytics while I remember, because I'll probably forget. So, yeah, this video did really, really well. It's been out for 2 weeks now and has got 17,700 views, which, I've had videos that have done a lot better than that over the years, but I've also had a few in recent months that have done a lot worse than that. So I'm certainly very grateful indeed for all of those views and all the great feedback on that video and the people who've been sharing it and discussing it. It was a lot of fun to put together, as you might imagine. And although the footage of the game actually being played in the factory didn't quite work out, wasn't quite as perfect as it could have been, just due to the challenging filming conditions and stuff. We certainly had a lot of fun, and I think that does come across in the video. So yeah, appealing to a wider audience, 54% more views than usual, and 191 new subscribers. I wonder if those people know about Reese Rambles as well. Anyway, that's always nice. And of course, I'm not the only one running Doom on interesting devices. And I must admit, I think this one's been quite a long time coming, because I would have assumed that there would be a port of Doom for this system, but apparently not. And the system I'm talking about is the Sharp X68000, which is a Japanese gaming machine, which of course uses the Motorola 68000 CPU, same as the Amiga, the Atari ST, the Mega Drive, stuff like that, and a lot of arcade games. And indeed, a lot of the arcade games of the time were developed on the X68000, and it has some of the best arcade ports of its time. For those 68,000 based games, not to mention a whole hardware scene around it. Some absolute, the Sharp X68000 is a legendary machine in its own right, a masterpiece of hardware design, and also, quite an intriguing thing for those of us in the rest of the world who didn't get the chance to purchase them at the time. Now, there is a GitHub page for this, but it is all in Japanese, and unfortunately I'm not fully up to speed on my Japanese. I was doing Duolingo for quite a while, although I have since given up on that. But thankfully we do have the power of Google Translate, so I guess we'll use that. And this is Doom 8088, the X68000 edition. It runs on an MC68000 or an X68000 with at least 2 megabytes of memory, even if you don't have an X68030 or similar accelerator, which is quite interesting because, of course, we've seen native ports of stuff like Wolfenstein 3D to the Atari STE. Some similar stuff on the Amiga as well, of course, but seeing full-blown Doom on an unaccelerated 68000 machine is quite the achievement, I think. So, yeah, the M68000 10 megahertz is too heavy, so we recommend an X68000 XVI, is that 16, which is the 16 megahertz version. That would make sense. Or a machine with an accelerator, since heap memory can be allocated up to 4 megabytes of free memory. If you have 6 meg or more of memory installed, loading during the game will be reduced and the game will run more smoothly. So, Doom 1 Episode 1 is playable. We have a rotating map in there, as per the original. Only Demo 3 can be played. It's a 256 colour display. Beep sound effects are simulated using FM sound sources. There's no music. Texture mapping of floors and ceilings is not supported, so full-blown Wolf 3D mode. Not that I'm going to complain about that. No shading, no save and load function, no multiplayer, PWAD's not available, screen size cannot be changed, and there's no mouse or joystick support. Although if there's anyone playing Doom with the joystick, what are you playing at? And of course, there is a video, so we'll go and check out the video as well. And bear in mind, this is running on a 16 megahertz 68,000 based system, and I think it looks pretty good. I mean, it's recognisably Doom, isn't it? I mean, all right, it is running at, what is that, about 2 or 3 frames per second. But I've certainly played Doom on worse systems over the years, I'm sure. And you can see someone here playing through basically the first map, E1M1. Now, this is quite a new project, and it is, of course, very much a work in progress. So hopefully things will improve as more work is done on this. You can see I like the lava here, this kind of flashing green floor to represent the lava texture, which, of course, they can't do. They can't do textured floors and ceilings as per that GitHub specification. We'll just skip a little bit further ahead here. And you can see that they're coming through to the exit, hitting that exit switch, and we also have the summary screens at the end as well that tot up all of the kills, items and secrets from each level. So we have seen some so-called ports of Doom to things like PDFs and animated GIFs and pregnancy tests and things like that, which are perhaps only very tenuously Doom. They might have some kind of vaguely recognisable, very simplified elements to them. But if you showed this to anyone, even someone with a passing familiarity with the game, I think they'd agree that this is actually Doom. So, I think it's a very competent port of Doom. Shame it doesn't run a little bit faster, but of course, I mean, it's such an achievement on this hardware, isn't it? And hopefully things can only improve from here. So, that is 8088 ST, Doom 8088 ST X68K, which is Doom for the Sharp X68000. And you can run it on a 10 megahertz machine if you are a masochist, or indeed, as per this video, a 16 megahertz machine if you are slightly less of a masochist. Now, another game that I have talked about a fair bit over the years here on Reese Rambles has been GTA, Grand Theft Auto, of course, DMA Design, later Rockstar, their vehicle stealing and crime simulation game that caused such a huge stir when it was first released all the way back in 1997. And it seems there's always something interesting going on in the world of GTA. Of course, we've got GTA 6, which keeps being delayed over and over again, and there were leaks, and the studio exploded, and all sorts of drama going on around that. So it's not something I'm really trying to keep an active interest in. I'm sure they'll probably be more focused on getting every single penny they can out of online multiplayer players, which is not something I've ever played. I've always enjoyed the kind of single-player stories of those games. But anyway, my love for GTA is something that started all the way back in 97, the original game on the PC, and I played it to death when it was first released. I would have been 13 years old, so of course right up my street, the violence and the bad language and the very cool soundtrack and stuff as someone who was coming of age at that time. I did play GTA 2. I think I actually played GTA 2 a lot more than the original, which was also, of course, it was the second of the top-down. Well, depending how you count it, of course, there was a couple of episodes released for GTA, and there was GTA London, and then 2, and obviously then it went 3D after that. But yeah, of course, the last of the 2D top-down Grand Theft Auto games, and a very different experience for people who I think who are perhaps only familiar with the modern 3D offerings, although still, all brilliant games in their own right. Anyway, I recently have been playing with a machine that I hope to use in a future video, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but one of the games that came to mind that I wanted to try out on it was indeed the original GTA. And I couldn't get it to work. I actually jumped through a few hoops. I found a guide on the Steam community, and there was just... there must have been about 25 steps or something to go through, and files to download from various places and dump into certain, folders and things, and overwrite bits of the base game. And I gave up. I'm far too easily distracted for that kind of stuff. So this story on PC Gamer was very welcome news for me indeed. So it's a story here by Joe Donnelly, PCGamer.com. And the headline is, a GTA modder has got the 1997 original working perfectly on modern PCs and Steam Deck, and it's a joy to behold. I wanted to pick up and play GTA on Windows with the best possible compatibility without classic installation. And of course, works on modern Windows and also on the Steam Deck, so on Linux as well. Wonderful. Tonight we're going to party like it's 1997, writes Joe Donnelly. In the most welcome of news, you can now play the original Grand Theft Auto, the 97 top-down chaos in a shoebox crime simulator that started it all, on modern PCs and Steam Decks without cursing at your screen and tearing your hair out. As a long-suffering bald man, I'm not sure I can confidently pin my lack of follicle fullness on being unable to reliably run the OG GTA on modern hardware until now, but it has always been a total faff. Removed from digital storefronts such as Steam by Rockstar in the earliest stretch of the last decade. That's interesting because I've got it on my Steam account, so I must have bought it years ago. Middling mods and haphazard emulation have hardly managed to bridge the gap in the interim. Enter Luke Storm, who has packaged the game into something he calls GTA Ready to Play, a plug-and-play mini time capsule that runs like it somehow belongs in 2026. And you can see here we've got Liberty City and San Andreas. San Andreas, Liberty City and Vice City, the 3 episodes on there, all up and running and working perfectly, apparently. For Luke Storm, this wasn't a crusade so much as a hobby. Hey, it wouldn't be Reese Rambles if I didn't completely trip over my words at some point. The story continues. For Luke Storm, this wasn't a crusade so much as a hobby, spiralling into digital preservation. It's truly a passion project for me to prepare older games in my own ready-to-play style, he says. My ready-to-play bundles, everything to play easily without tinkering and classic installation on modern Windows systems. The individually crafted portable launcher ensures that the game is ready to play at any time. Wonderful. What's fascinating is how unambitious the project's beginnings were. Luke Storm didn't set out to revive a community, engineer a definitive version, or solve compatibility issues for thousands of nostalgic players. I wanted to have GTA, the Windows version, with the best possible compatibility and without classic installation in my ready-to-play style. That was my only idea, he says. For a long time, it wasn't clear whether I would release Ready to Play in this form at all. Yet, here it is. And if the stream of positive replies and comments on the mod's GTA forums thread are anything to go by, calling it celebrated among those playing likely doesn't do it justice. So that's a very wordy way of saying that Luke Storm wanted to play GTA, didn't want to mess around with it too much, so he packaged it up all in his own style and thought, you know what, let's put this out there and let the community enjoy it as well. And it's actually become a huge thing in the world of Grand Theft Auto, which is really cool. There are fixes to audio crashes and missing menu sounds, which were made as a direct result of the feedback that he got from that early testing. And even more surprising to him was the number of players running it on Steam Deck and Linux. Luke Storm hasn't tested it there himself, granted, but he's still marvelling at the reports weeks and months down the line. It was exciting to see, and I was surprised how many people tried it on Steam Deck or Linux. So there you go. Now, it does go into a bit more detail about the process that Luke Storm used to package this up and some of the hoops that he had to jump through and things that he had to fix to get this game up and running. And it's quite an interesting tale. So this will be linked down in the description. As you can probably see if you're watching this on YouTube, there is a fair bit more to this story over on PC Gamer. And I always link all of my stories and all of my sources down in the description, also in the show notes for if you're listening to this on your favourite podcast app and want to do some reading and some catching up. But the important thing here is, of course, that the original GTA is back and in a very easily playable form. You can play it on your modern Windows machine, you can play it on your Linux gaming machine, you can even play it on your SteamOS-based handheld like the Steam Deck, or perhaps even that GPD Bazzite thing that I talked about earlier on. I have been wanting to check this game out again for quite a while. A few years back, I did briefly have a dabble with it again for a video that I did for something. It was a collaboration, or apologies whoever that was. I've completely forgotten about that. I've been doing this for a few years now. And I'm going to have to get this installed and I'm going to have to give it a play, perhaps take it on holiday or something with me and play through the original GTA again, because I was a huge fan of the game, as mentioned, back when it was first released in '97, and I think it would be a lot of fun to play again today. And hopefully you agree. So there we go. That's GTA. It's back. Will be linked below along with all the other stories that I talked about in this week's Ramble. Now, of course, with me having had a week off, quite a bit of news has accumulated over the past couple of weeks, and it would be remiss of me to not share that news with you, but I will say I've not been keeping fully up to speed, and there is some stuff that I don't really have a great deal to say about, but I do think that you should know about. So I'm bringing back a bit of an older feature. I used to do this quite regularly, but I don't think I've done it for quite a while, and I never did have a proper name for it, but we're going to do a bit of a roundup. I have 5 stories here that I'm just going to rattle through as quickly as I can. Of course, by my standards, I could end up still rambling on about them endlessly in that way that I do, but I assume that's what you're here for. But yeah, 5 stories that I just want to bring to your attention. Again, they will be linked down below, and some interesting stuff happening in the world of gaming. So first up, gamingbible.com. There's a story here by Kate Harold, and this is reporting on the original creator of Rayman. If you remember Rayman, that's a fantastic platformer. Back in the day, I think it was released on the PC and perhaps better known as a PlayStation 1 game. It was also released on the Atari Jaguar, one of the best games on the Jaguar, although not an exclusive. Michelle Ancel, who was the creator of the original Rayman, has made a reference to an HD re-release, so basically a remastered version of that original game, in a new interview in Retro Gamer magazine. And this is something that's been picked up by quite a few of the news sites, including Gaming Bible here. So, even though it's complex, I think there's a kind of remake planned, said Ancel. I don't remember when specifically, but it will be in HD, and I think Ubisoft is adding a few more checkpoints and things like that just to make it a bit less frustrating. I think it's a nice move because that's the only point that could be a problem for non-skilled players. It's odd that we surpassed Rayman's 30th anniversary in September of last year. As I'd have said, that's a perfect time to revisit such a classic game. And of course, I did report in my last ramble that there were some issues and some restructuring and things going on at Ubisoft, mass layoffs and studio restructures and stuff like that. So perhaps that's why this has been delayed. Whether this is still going to happen, I'm not sure, but the original creator of the Rayman series certainly seems to think that it is. So perhaps that's something we can look forward to. Now, in some perhaps rather less fortunate news for Jurassic Park fans, if you are a fan of the Jurassic Park Classic Games collection on Steam, which is, I'll just give you the list of games. There is Jurassic Park 8-bit, there is Jurassic Park Portable, 16-bit Genesis, we've got Jurassic Park Part 2, The Chaos Continues, 16-bit and Portable, and also Jurassic Park Rampage Edition for the Genesis, or indeed the Mega Drive. That was released a while back, only a couple of years back, November 2023, by Limited Run Games, of course, as a bit of a re-released package of all of these fantastic games. As we can see here, we've got some Game Boy Jurassic Park games, we've got Mega Drive 16-bit Jurassic Park games. And if you are looking to pick these up, they are currently available for $24.99 for the complete package, but not for much longer. Thank you to Vanessa, I think, for pointing this out on my Discord community. This will only be available until March the 31st, 2026. Now, if you buy it before then, you will have access to this perpetually, forever, through your Steam account, or indeed any of the other digital storefronts where it is available. So yeah, if you do want to pick up the Jurassic Park Classic Games collection on Steam, you only have until the end of March to do that. So yeah, make sure you get around to it if that's something you've been putting off for the past 2 years. Next story is TimeExtension.com. Damien McFerrin, our old friend, Modder somehow conjures Super Mario 64 cross-play between N64 and PS2. Now, you'll know that as someone who was a bit of a latecomer to the N64, I'm a big fan of Super Mario 64. I think it was basically the first 3D platformer that got everything right. I know it annoys people when you say that, but, you know, as a package, you can't deny that it was very well polished and stuff, as you might expect from Nintendo. But, of course, only ever officially released for the N64, the kind of the big name killer app for that console, or certainly one of them. And over the years, it has been reverse engineered, it has been decompiled, and it has been ported to various other systems, the PC perhaps being the big headline one, but here we're talking about the PlayStation 2 port. And indeed, you can now connect your N64 to your PS2, and you can both, you can actually play it cooperative, two-player, across two different platforms. Yeah, while Nintendo and Sega have long since kissed and made up following a bloody hardware war in the 90s, the Kyoto company is still actively at odds with Sony, the maker of the PlayStation, a console that very nearly played SNES games. Of course, we all know about that. With that in mind, the notion of Mario being on PS2 is pretty mind-boggling, but modder Carl Does Tech Things has made it happen, all with the help of a PS2 recompilation of Super Mario 64 and a Raspberry Pi Pico. And there is a video here of this up and running, and also a bit of an explanation of how it all works and uses this Raspberry Pi Pico as a kind of go-between. So you can go and check that out and not only see Mario 64 running on a PlayStation 2, but also a two-player co-op version of Mario 64. Running cross-platform between the PS2 and the N64, which is quite a technical feat. Also, in my little roundup of news here, a new Gobliins game, Gobliins 6, has been released. This is a point-and-click adventure game in 2D. French and English versions, 16 large levels packed with puzzles, characters, music and humour, choice of language directly in the game, and you can change display settings, full screen or windowed. It's the sequel to Gobliins 2, the big comeback of Fingus and Winkle. In a troubled world of war and magic, the two adventurers set out again in search of King Angulafri's son, Prince Buffoon. The characters are faced with numerous puzzles, they work in cooperation, and each has their inventory. A new episode of the series Gobliins, directed by the initial author, and that's the important thing. So this is an official sequel to the Gobliins games. These screenshots look absolutely glorious, I will say. I mean, look at this art style. I love this a lot. This is brilliant. An official sequel from the original creator of the series, kind of in the same style, although slightly updated, although I think done very tastefully. And yeah, it's just been released today, or was it yesterday? So please do go and check that out if you are a fan of the Gobliins games. It's not a series I've ever checked out. I will say, I know this is a bit of a recurring theme here on Reese Rambles. I like to share this stuff with you for those of you who are kind of fans of this stuff. But of course, I can't have played everything that's been released over the years, and I do need to check out Gobliins at some point. hopefully, with all the stuff that I've got on my list, hopefully I'll be retiring pretty soon because it's going to take me a long time to go through everything. But Gobliins 6, do go and check that out. There is a link to go and download that on itch.io, and you can get that for $10. And that's been released for Windows, and it's only a 497 megabyte download, which is pretty tiny by today's standards, isn't it? What you would expect from such a retro-styled game. And finally, my attention has been drawn to an Atari 8-bit emulator written in JavaScript. However, unfortunately, this doesn't... Oh, there we go. That wasn't working a minute ago when I tried it. Perhaps it hadn't finished loading. Fortunately, it does work, and I'm running this in Firefox on macOS at the moment. But as you can see, this emulates the Atari 8-bit ROM, the Atari 8-bit operating system, basic ROMs and stuff, so you can load up your own disk images and things and run them on here. It's all quite comprehensive, and of course it all runs in your web browser as well. I love this kind of CRT shader effect that they've got here. We've got this these lovely rounded corners and the scan lines and things. I think that is rather tastefully done, but it's so cool to see a whole computer being emulated in a web browser. Of course, it's not a new thing, and we do have some more sophisticated machines that we can emulate nowadays. I mean, I've even seen like Windows 9X and stuff running in a web browser. But, you know, I love the technical achievement of this, and also very handy as well, you know, if you want to check out your Atari 8-bit games or software or whatever on the move on your modern computer in your web browser. You can now go to jsa8e.anides.de and check it out for yourself. So there we go, bit of a roundup of news for you. We have Rayman, which is hopefully coming back as confirmed by the game's original creator, although not sure how the stuff that's going on at Ubisoft is going to affect that. We have Jurassic Park, the classic games collection, which will be vanishing from Steam and apparently other digital storefronts as well on the 31st of March. Those classic Genesis/Mega Drive and Game Boy games, so go and grab that if you still want to check that out. We have the cross-play N64 versus PS2 Super Mario 64 co-op mod, rather crazy video, rather impressive technical achievement. We've got a new official Goblins game, Gobliins 6. I'm not going to ask what happened to Goblins 3 to 5. Who knows? And finally, we have a JavaScript emulator for the Atari 8-bit machines, as released way back in 1979, one of my favourite platforms of all time. And apparently it does work. So that's good. And that, of course, brings us around rather neatly to our regular Video of the Week feature, wherein I feature a video that I have seen in the past week here in the old YouTubes that has entertained or enlightened or educated or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Quite often they are retro and vintage computing, gaming and tech related. Quite often they aren't. Quite often there's one, and quite often there's more than one. But today I have 3 for you, 2 which should tickle your fancy as far as the retro computing side of things goes, and one that's probably a little bit different. You know, I like to throw the odd curveball in now and then. So without further ado, let's see what these videos are all about. Now, the first one is from MVG. Dimitris, of course, a really big channel in our particular sphere, and you may have seen this, you may have had it come up on your recommendations, as I did. I actually watched this morning. I woke up ridiculously early this morning for some reason, and I decided to lie in bed and give this a watch, and I'm very glad that I did, because this is about the history of console mod chips, and he talks a bit about the PlayStation and the Xbox specifically, although the GameCube and some others do get a mention as well. Talks about how, of course, it enabled piracy and things, but also the whole homebrew scene, which he has been a homebrew developer in the past. He's been quite actively involved in particularly the Xbox homebrew scene, stuff like MAME and other emulators on the original Xbox. So very knowledgeable about the subject. I love it when MVG covers stuff like this. I think it's great to kind of hear his insider industry knowledge on these things and his take on these things. And he isn't shy to talk about them either, about the piracy side of it. So a bit of a history, if you're not familiar with kind of the anti-piracy measures on these consoles and how they were defeated, and the very simple ways in which they were defeated quite early on as well. Surprisingly simple, of course, once people work them out. That's early console mod chips, from piracy to freedom, and it's 10 minutes and 56 seconds long. It's got 203,000 views in 11 days, which is good to see, well deserved, I think. and that's from Modern Vintage Gamer, of course, otherwise known as MVG. So my second video of the week for this week is a Pico IDE review. I've been banging on about this for the past few weeks because I am working on my own review of the Pico IDE, I promise. I just keep getting derailed, and Ian's too bloody good and keeps releasing updates and things for it, and I just can't... It's a moving target. It's the absolute worst thing for someone with a brain like mine. But of course, the crowdsourcing, crowdfunding campaign is still ongoing over on Crowd Supply. Smashed its target within the first day, as I reported last time on Reese Rambles, and is still going very strong indeed. So I will link to that down below if you do want to go and get your order in for one of these. But it is definitely happening, and it will also have a rather nice upgraded injection molded case. And I did get some accusations of being a shell and a paid off whatever. I did. I think I was. I'm sure I was open about the fact that I was given this thing for free, but I love it. It's something that the retro computing community has been waiting for a long time, and we are starting to see some of the early reviews. I am in a bit of a group chat with some of the other channels that are involved. There are some big names in there, and I'm very interested to see their takes on it too. But really good to see Phil's Computer Lab here with his kind of straight out of the gate unboxing and kind of a quick overview of the basic functionality and a bit of the story behind the Pico IDE itself. So I'm certainly not in competition with other channels. I am more than happy to point out other channels that are covering the same stuff that I am, so you can get different people's takes on these things. I think it's very important to get lots of informed opinions and things. Also important for those of us to, in the community to support each other and give each other a bit of a shout out, I think. And I certainly am a big fan of Phil and his work. So do go and check that out. 11 minutes and 44 seconds long. Pico IDE, CD-ROM IDE Atari emulator. Very catchy title. I'm sure it used to be. I'm sure it was something else. I think he's changed that. And that's over on Phil's Computer Lab, a channel that you should be subscribed to if you like anything that I do. And thirdly, I said that I had a bit of a curveball for you. I'm not going to play any of this on Reese Rambles. You should go and check out the video for yourself and give it a listen. This is Adam Buxton, and it's a song. It's a song about wearing shorts and being particularly a tragic middle-aged man who wears shorts at all times, which isn't something I can really relate to. I'm more of a summer shorts kind of guy, but I certainly know a lot of people like this, and it's certainly a very funny song. I love Adam Buxton. I love everything he does. I've been watching him since the Adam and Joe days, back when I was far too young to be watching that on a Friday night. And he's written some great books, has a fantastic podcast, or at least had a fantastic podcast. Not sure if he's still doing that. And occasionally pops up with these rather weird and random songs about things. And this isn't the first one of his that I promoted, and probably won't be the last. So there you go. All three of those videos will be linked down below. We've got a video all about early console mod chips from Modern Vintage Gamer. We have the Pico IDE review from Phil's Computer Lab, and also a song about shorts from Adam Buxton. So hopefully something there for everyone. And that, quite sadly, is that. Of course, all good things must come to an end, and Reese Rambles is indeed no exception. So thank you ever so much for joining me this week. Reese Rambles goes out every single week, except when it doesn't, like last week. On my second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Reese Rambles, and also on all of the podcast platforms, and it is released every Friday night at 2 minutes to midnight. All of the links to everything that I've talked about here on Reese Rambles are available down in the description, or indeed in the show notes in your podcast app, if indeed your podcast app supports such a thing, and also on my website, control.reese.com, which I always forget to talk about. But all of my rambles are automatically published to the website, as indeed are all of the links, if that's an easier way for you to access them. So that is that. All that's left is to say a big thank you to all of my Discord community, particularly the people who have submitted stories that I have talked about this week. Names including Steve's Tech Shed, Gravitone, Technic, Vanessa, Sozzled, Naoki, BD Electrics, and our good friend Manemo. As always, great community over there. They are constantly chatting away about stuff. Just having a look at it now, and apparently there's a conversation going on at the moment about the men's luge doubles in the Olympics. That's an interesting looking sport. But if you want to talk about that and more, you are more than welcome to come and join us. There's a link to come and join the Discord server down in the description. But that's all I've got for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you once again for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you again next week. Bye.